Have you ever felt as though there are different versions of you operating at different times? There may be one version of you that holds everything together, the one who goes to work, keeps the household running, manages logistics, says the right things, and appears calm and functional to the outside world. This version experiences life as intense, chaotic, maybe in a fun way, and workable. The relationship feels passionate. Her behavior is understood as personality, as quirks, as her trauma to manage, as her humor, or just a spark. You say she's passionate, she's fun, and your role inside that world is clear. Adapt, stabilize, keep things moving, make it work. Then there may also be another version of you that emerges when a fight starts or when something feels threatening. This one remembers the prior incidences of abuse, not in a neat narrative way, but in flashes of fear, sensation, and emotion. Memories surface without warning. Your heart races, your thinking narrows, and the present moment fills with evidence of the abuse from the past, all the times this pattern has played out before. And sometimes, beneath both of those, there is something quieter, a presence that appears in moments of stillness rather than crisis. When you're sitting alone in the car after work, staring at the steering wheel, just trying to make sense of why life feels the way it does. This part simply notices that something doesn't add up, even when you can't yet explain what that is. If you recognize yourself in this, you are not fragmenting, you are not unstable, and you are not losing your mind. This experience is commonly referred to as trauma splitting. In today's video, I'll briefly outline how the clinical literature describes trauma splitting, and then share an adaptation I've developed to explain how it operates inside long-term coercive control. For those of you who are new here, this is Stan again, a lived experience platform for male victims of family violence. Abuse is not limited to one gender, but this channel focuses on the male perspective because it is so often invisible in the mainstream support systems. If this content resonates with you, I need your help getting it in front of more people. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet, share it with someone who might need it. Drop a comment in the chat, even just the words "stand again," because engagement with the channel tells the algorithm that supporting male victims of family violence matters. And if you are in a position to support this work financially, there's a donate link or a shop in the description. Every contribution helps me to keep producing content for a community that has almost nowhere else to turn. Let's get into trauma splitting and what the literature says. Much of the foundational research on trauma-related splitting defines a model known as structural dissociation of the personality. It describes how traumatic experiences can lead the self to organize into distinct functional states, rather than operating as a fully integrated whole. In its most commonly referenced form, the model describes two primary functional orientations. The first is the apparent normal part, or ANP. This is the part orientated towards daily life, like going to work, maintaining routines, planning for the future, and performing expected roles. In the literature, the ANP is described as limiting access to trauma-related material, sometimes through emotional distancing, compartmentalization, or partial amnesia, in order to remain functional. The second is the emotional part, or EP. This part holds the traumatic memory networks and survival responses. When activated, it experiences the trauma as if it's happening in the present, with strong emotional, physiological, and defensive reactions. The EP is reactive rather than reflective, orientated towards immediate survival rather than long-term coherence. This framework has helped many survivors understand why they can feel internally divided, why certain triggers produce intense reactions that feel disconnected from their everyday self, and why trauma can seem to take over without warning. It remains a valuable and well-established model for understanding trauma responses. What follows aims to adapt and extend this framework to account for the specific dynamics of long-term coercive control, where the threat is ongoing, relational, and psychologically complex. I've adapted this framework for coercive control. The ANP and EP model explains trauma splitting as two functional states, one that keeps life going and one that carries fear, memory, and survival responses when threat is present. That description fits trauma that can be remembered as something that happened. Coercive control, though, is different. The threat is not located in the past. It's relational, ongoing, and it's unpredictable. Because of that, trauma splitting does not operate as a reaction to isolated incidents. It becomes the structure through which daily life is organized. In this context, the state that keeps life running is not simply returning to apparent normal functioning. It is actively maintaining a version of reality that allows the relationship to remain intact and survivable. And the state that carries fear is not emotionally recalling a past trauma. It's responding with patterns that help you reduce the risk of further harm. That can sometimes emotionally overwhelm you. And under sustained pressure like this, something else develops, a quieter capacity that starts to notice the split itself, not during the blowups, but in the silence afterwards. It begins to compare the story that keeps life running with the memories that surface in threat. It starts to recognize patterns, it starts to build enough internal scaffolding to hold the truth without collapsing. What follows now is a functional description of those systems as they operate inside long term coercive control, using my lived experience language to explain why the split persists, deepens, and eventually becomes something that must be understood and embraced in order to recover. Let's start with the safe operator. The literature describes the apparent normal part as getting on with life, with detachment or amnesia around trauma. I think that framing is too passive. What I've experienced and what I see in others is something far more active, and I call this part the safe operator. The safe operator isn't just functioning, it's constructing a narrative that allows you to function within your designated roles. From the outside, this can look like apparent normal life. You go to work, you do the housework, you manage the logistics, but it's not normal life. Normal life would include your own hobbies, your own friendships, your own autonomy. The safe operator creates stories that explain why those things are not happening. You just don't have time, you're not really interested anymore, you prefer staying at home. These narratives are built from several sources: stories the abuser has told you, stories you tell yourself, and selective memories that support those stories. Alongside this, you actively suppress memories and thoughts that might threaten the narrative the safe operator has constructed for you. This is sophisticated protection. The narrative comforts you while you do the work of risk reduction, because that's the other half of what the safe operator does. It manages your behavior to minimize the chance of an abusive explosion. It works hard to earn more money, making sure the house is clean, choosing your words carefully, monitoring your tone, your timing, your mood. Everything calibrated to reduce risk. This is not amnesia and it's not detachment. It's an active, ongoing operation designed to keep you safe within the system you're living in. The safe operator gives you the story and the scripts to cope with your designated role within the relationship. The next part is the trauma reactor. The literature describes the emotional part as flooded, reactive, stuck in trauma time, an emotional mess when triggered. Again, I think this misses the function underneath. I call this part the trauma reactor. The trauma reactor activates when threat is present. When something happens that signals danger, it opens the filing cabinet, not randomly but selectively. It pulls the memory that are relevant to this specific threat. All the times she screamed like this before, all the times this particular pattern played out, it floods you with historical data, and the purpose of that data is survival. It's saying, here is everything I have on situations like this one. Find the pattern that saved you before. Please use it now. The emotional overwhelm that comes with this, like the racing heart, the fear, the sense of being flooded, that's real because it's a side effect of the protective function. not the function itself. The trauma reactor isn't trying to break you down, it's trying to arm you. It's unlocking the archive and handing you everything it thinks might help you survive the next few minutes. This is why the flooding can feel selective. You might get all the times that she screamed at you, but not all the times she gaslit you or even cheated on you. The trauma reactor is pulling what's relevant to the current threat, trying to give your active brain the specific information it needs. Again, it might not be specific to this, it might just be similar and related events that helps you. When the threat passes, you don't stay in trauma reactor mode. You shift back to the safe operator, who resumes the narrative in the scripts. The trauma reactor was there briefly. It did its job, and then it stepped back when it wasn't needed. The third split is the integrator. Underneath the safe operator and the trauma reactor, there's a quieter presence. I call it the integrator. It's not running survival scripts, it's not constructing narratives or flooding you with memories. It's doing something very, very different. It's trying to make sense of why there seems to be two versions of you. The integrator is not a separate personality state in the clinical sense. It's a capacity for meta awareness that becomes accessible when the system has enough space to observe itself. The integrator is logical. It works slowly in the background, building scaffolding piece by piece. It's the one sitting in the car staring at the steering wheel, trying to figure out what is going on. It's the one who notices that something just does not add up, even when you can't articulate what. At first, it shows up as a nameless, unsettling feeling, a sense that something is wrong without clarity on what. Then it becomes a quiet voice. It might even start to open gates to both the safe operator and the trauma reactor to show you what you need to know in that moment. Hey, check these out. Look at this. Do you see this split happening? What's going on? This can feel similar to the trauma reactor because memory surface, but the quality is actually different. The integrator is not trying to arm you for immediate threat, it's trying to show you patterns of the split so that you can understand. And when the conditions are right, when enough scaffolding has been built, the integrator gets loud. I'll talk about that a little bit later on. It's the one who eventually says clearly and unmistakably, you are in an abusive relationship. This is what's been happening. This is why there are two versions of you. Understanding this framing with the three parts that I just outlined is important. The two-part model that I described earlier on from a clinical perspective can leave you feeling like you've been broken into pieces with like a normal self that's somewhat functional and a traumatized self that's a liability. My experience is that both the safe operator and the trauma reactor are actually doing very important work. They are not liabilities. They're both sophisticated safety mechanisms designed to keep you alive and as okay as possible within an abusive system. The safe operator says, here is the narrative and the scripts to cope with your designated roles. The trauma reactor says, here is the historical data to survive this active threat. The integrator is the part orientated towards something beyond survival. It's the one who sees the meta level, who can ask why this system exists at all, and who can eventually help you step out of it. No part is broken. They're doing exactly what they're designed to do when you are in the middle of abuse. For survival, in some ways, it's great that they exist. Yet they are optimized for surviving within a situation that should not be in your life. An awakening is needed. So let's talk about the roles of the integrator, the safe operator, and the trauma reactor when an awakening occurs. Awakening is not a single moment. There's no perfect argument or perfect set of words that awakens a person lost within coercive control. It's a process that the integrator leads. It usually begins quietly. The nameless sense that something isn't right that I described earlier, a background discomfort you can't explain. then questions start to surface. Not accusations, just gentle inconsistencies. Like, why does this keep happening? Why do I feel like this? These questions don't arrive during crisis, they tend to appear in moments of stillness, often when you're alone, when there's just enough space for reflection. As this continues, the integrator starts to work more deliberately. It opens doors carefully, showing you fragments from both systems that might be running your life. Pieces from the safe operator's narrative, pieces from the trauma reactor's narrative. Not all at once and not in a way that overwhelms you, but just enough to begin revealing patterns you hadn't been able to see before. With time, the integrator gathers evidence. This happens through repeated incidences of harm, through the growing confusion of why your internal world feels so split, and sometimes through particularly severe episodes of abuse that tip the balance. Each incident adds weight, each pattern adds clarity. Slowly, the scaffolding is built enough for the truth to be held without collapsing you. Eventually, there's a tipping point. That's the awakening, where the integrator raises its voice and says the words clearly: you are in an abusive relationship. When this happens, it can feel like everything shifts at once. The safe operator may resist this insight. The truth directly threatens the scripts it has been relying on to keep you safe. Those scripts were built for survival, and abandoning them feels dangerous. This is why awakening often comes with internal conflict, and why it's important not to rush this process. At the same time, the trauma reactor needs reassurance. It needs to know that its archive, the fear, the memories, and the vigilance, has served a purpose, that the evidence it has carried has helped reveal the danger, that its work now supports a different kind of safety, which is getting away from the threat rather than enduring it. Awakening is that moment when the integrator convinces both systems that survival inside the current setup is no longer possible, that the danger is too persistent, too insidious, and too costly to be managed by the existing strategies. A new model of safety is required, one that involves tools like grey rock, exit planning, and external support. After awakening, the integrator's role changes. As recovery begins, it helps the safe operator recognize that the old narratives were just survival tools, not truth. It helps the trauma reactor understand that its archive is evidence, material to be worked through, repaired, and healed, rather than something that needs to keep firing off alarms. Gradually, it brings the parts into communication so they can operate together instead of in isolation. That process doesn't happen quickly, it takes time, and it often takes support, whether through trauma informed therapy or coaching, like someone with myself, or other forms of grounded guidance. Understanding that all three systems have been trying to protect you can fundamentally change how you relate to yourself as you move forward. If any of this resonated, I want you to know that you're not broken, you're not fragmented beyond repair, you've just been running a sophisticated survival system. And every part of that system has been trying to keep you safe. The work now, depending on where you are in your journey, may be survival only, or it could be in recovery. If you're interested in the stages to thriving, you can find them on the website www.standagain.com.au. If you want to understand more about how emotional processing gets hijacked in abusive relationships and how to repair it, I've written a book called Reconnecting with Your Feelings After Abuse. It walks through the full framework, what healthy processing looks like, how coercive control disrupts it, and a step by step guide for reconditioning your nervous system. You've survived something that required you to split into parts just to get through it. That's an extraordinary adaptation. And now, if you're listening to this, it's likely the integrator is already leading the way so that you can begin the work of becoming whole again. This is Stand Again, lived experience platform for male survivors of family violence. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Your voice might just help another man find his. If you're looking for one on one support, you can book coaching with a member of the Stand Again team. Simply visit standagain.com.au, where you will also find grounded information on surviving and recovering from family violence as a man. As always, remember that no matter how many times you've been knocked down, you can stand again.